Hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. And today I have a new friend named Caren Roblin on my show. And Caren and I were connected somehow on Facebook. We have a lot of mutual friends and all the things. And she lives in the area that I live in. And Caren is the owner of Kaia Fit Sierra, a women's fitness and nutrition program with 4 Reno Sparks locations, as well as digital marketing strategist and journalism instructor at the University of Nevada, Reno. Caren lost her mother to breast cancer as a child, and the experience dramatically shaped who she is today. A proponent of women's health, Caren advocates for early screenings and overall breast health education. She doesn't just talk the talk. She also walks the walk, sticking to her own recommended screening schedule, even when she does not have health insurance to help with costs. And that's a huge deal. Hello, Caren. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hello. So great to be here.
Well, I'm excited because we do this on video too, and it goes on YouTube. So I'm excited for my audience to see your gorgeous purple hair. Uh, I
You're
just
so
think it's so
kind.
beautiful. I love the style and everything. So I'm just glad that we were able to connect because, you have such a great story, much like a couple of other people. Like I interviewed Isha Casagrande a while back, and she is a local icon in our area, fitness stylist, women's stylist, and her mother also died of breast cancer. And so hearing the perspective of women whose mothers died of breast cancer and how that has shaped the trajectory of your life going forward, I think is really important to kind of bring to the surface for other people, because there's so many people in your very similar situation where, they have this memory of their mom only up to a certain point, and moving forward, that's really hard to kind of wrap your mind around because you
Mm.
don't have the memory moving forward. Isha herself surpassed the how old her mother was when she had breast cancer. I'm not sure if that's the case with you too, but it was a really interesting pivotal point for her in her life, thinking to herself, wow, I'm the age of my mother right now of when she died of breast cancer. And that's really interesting. So I'm just really glad that you're here to talk about your story. So one of the questions I would love to ask for you to share with our audience is, who was Caren before her mom's breast cancer diagnosis? And how did your perspective of your mom change during the diagnosis?
Sure. So, before my mom was diagnosed, we'd always been just me and her. She was a single mom. I'm an only child. And, we frequently moved back and forth between San Diego and Las Vegas. I was born in New Jersey, actually, Inglewood. She was working in New York at one point, but it really was just me and her against the world. But she also was very, very protective and sheltered me in a lot of ways, very much spoiled me. If we lived in an apartment or a townhome or whatever that looked like, I was the one who was given the master bedroom, which or the master suite. And that seems a little crazy now, but at the time, it just wasn't even, that was just normal. I didn't know that there was any other way that anyone really went about giving away the master suite. Um, I was very spoiled. The world really did revolve around me, promoting my success in school, making sure that I was academically sound, making sure I had the best grades, going to public school, but also kind of mixing in some private school years as well. And once she was diagnosed, it kind of came paired with some other injuries. She had fallen and badly fractured her knee, and ultimately realized later that her back was also injured. And it really took her from being this like powerhouse in my life, to being someone that I mostly had to care for in a lot of ways, or at least be concerned about. And that really started around the age of 10 or so, as far as the injuries and needing to step up as a help in the household for her.
Right. And you mentioned, this idea that your childhood was like the tale of two childhoods.
Mhm.
So you had all of this experience with your mom before where you were held up and um treated kind of like a just as, a really important princess, and you were given
Definitely a
everything. You were
princess.
only, yeah. And so you were so used to that with your mom until she got the diagnosis. And explain to us a little more about how your perspective of your mom and your childhood changed, further than being kind of taking care of her. How,
Mm.
how did your perspective change over time during her diagnosis and your, eh, you know, very young child way of looking at things?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of, the diagnosis was that it was very much downplayed for me. So I very much fought as a child to still kind of live my life and think about myself. And obviously I loved my mom, so I would help, when I was asked to, and do things for her, and that was how I would show my love as well. But she was terminal as soon as she was diagnosed. Her screenings were not consistent. Her body was in a weakened state from the fall that she had taken. She was only in her 40s, but it's not like she was, super advanced age, like where one fall can take you out forever. It was all very surprising along the way. And so I was in a lot of denial, but I was also in a protected denial. I wasn't being given the truth, in a lot of which ways, unless I really had to be told. When she had a mastectomy, I had to change her tubes and the drainage bags and assist with that wound care. And
Wow.
I was very, very young. I believe I was 11 at that time. And those images stay with me for sure. But at the same time, I'm not being told that she's terminal. I'm being protected. But she knew she was. So we were moving back to San Diego because she knew I loved San Diego more than Las Vegas as a child. And knowing that she was going to pass at some point, probably soon, she wanted me to at least be in a place where I loved versus a place that I really didn't love in Las Vegas. And definitely with a year and a half or so of just caring more and more and more as her body was breaking down more and more and more, I just started to resent it and I started to rebel in ways that, I was very ashamed of after she passed, would fight a lot, would buck against what she would say. When things were getting really, really hard for her, when she was unable to dress herself or bathe, a friend of hers and her husband kind of moved in with us and helped in ways that I just wasn't physically able to help with anymore, as far as some of those. I couldn't lift her out of the tub per se, right? I wasn't large enough for that. And so my whole kind of world was shifting, but at the same time, I was still being very cocooned. I didn't know the truth of what was coming. I was still being told to do this, that, or the other. I wasn't being told, any context after a fight that, this could be the last month that we're even talking. So,
Yeah, I
um,
can understand that would be really, I mean, I can empathize with this resentment because you really didn't know. At the same time, you're watching her body break down. So
mhm.
at some point in time, did you know that she was probably dying without even being told?
No, no, I always had my mom on a pedestal where she was the strongest woman I ever knew. And it was fueled by a million different things. She was a marathoner. Like, I would ride my bike when she would be running. I'd ride my bike alongside her. Even when she fractured her knee, the doctors didn't realize it for 6 weeks because the muscles supposedly were so strong they were holding the kneecap in place, so they didn't realize. So I just was always on the front row of these amazing instances of, like, my mom is so strong. And even if things were getting harder for her, I just never fathomed a reality where there wasn't another side. There wasn't like a coming out the other end of it. It just never crossed my mind. It was
Right.
complete shock when she passed. And the day she passed, I had no idea.
Are you, I'm going to kind of ask another question. At this point now at your age, how old are you again?
I'm 40. Yeah, and she was
So
44. Hmm.
at this age, do you look back on what you were thinking at the time? And are you ever surprised that you didn't know that she was dying?
Sure. No, I mean, you look back and it's like, well, yeah. I mean, my mom could only wear a very long, extra long kind of nightshirt. She couldn't put on real clothes anymore at one point. She was using a walker to walk around. And this is a 44-year-old. She had shrunk in height, like significantly. Um, Everything was super incredibly painful. She had an incredibly hard time sleeping to the point where she had to sleep on a couch to try to get some firmness in certain ways at certain times because she couldn't possibly sleep. It was a sub quality of life looking back on it that
Mhm.
seems so obvious, from an adult
Mhm.
perspective, and definitely
Yeah.
someone who understands cancer treatment more now. But man, yeah, at the time it was just like, oh, like these two people our friends are gonna move in with us and help me out. And it was just all kind of like ho hum, this is how things are gonna be. And I was like, okay, well, I still get my room, right?
Right.
That that was the perspective,
I will tell you, I don't know if how much of my audience knows. I was a middle school teacher for many, many years, and I remember my middle school years very well, and the thought process that was going through my mind. So I understood middle school kids a lot, and even like sixth grade or whatever, because I did teach sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, and I understood their perspective in more ways than they probably even realized. So, um, anyway, okay, so eventually your mom died at age 44. That was in
Mhm.
1996. And you were 12 or 13 at the time. How old were you at the time?
At the time, I was 12.
12. Okay.
I turned 12 in July of 1996, and she passed away in September.
Okay. So when this happened, how did that play a role in how you actually handled the situation?
So the day that she passed, it was just another school day for me. I was sitting in my classroom, I believe it was a math class, and someone came into the class and called me up to the office. There was some reason I had to go to the office, and I did. And my soon-to-be guardian, her name was Cricket. She was there, and she said we had to go to the hospital, and that my mom wasn't doing too good. And it was news to me that she was even in the hospital because that morning she was not. So that was a surprise. And we get to the hospital, and by the time I'm walking into her hospital room, she's completely non responsive. And in general, she had, tubes coming out of her, just completely not able to engage. And um, it was definitely a visual that sticks with me, of course, because it just was. There was no, yes, there was a breaking down of her body, but there was no ramp up to a hospital stay. That just wasn't even part of anything that she had done before. And they're saying that she's probably not coming back from this. And I'm told to say my goodbyes. And I don't remember a ton of what I said other than I obviously loved her, and I asked if she could hear me, if she could blink. And I think I remember her blinking, but just in a way that, like, I hope that's because of that versus, just a natural blink. But it was, I wasn't there for the very end. They had me leave the room, and I went home. And then it was that night that my soon to be guardian, a friend of hers, Cricket, again, she came home and, gave me her watch and pointed at the time that maybe it was set to, and saying that this is the time that your mom passed and she's gone. And that's how that went. It was complete. It was almost like a car accident from my perspective.
Mhm.
It was just like another day, nothing different, and then it was just not another day.
Right. Right. That's terrible. That's a terrible feeling. Um, in hindsight, what do you wish the adults in the room would have done? How do you wish they would have handled it? for you?
Yeah, I understand my mom's decisions. I mean, she's coming off of 12 years of protecting me in a million ways, in general. She never brought anyone she may have been dating or not. I never saw anyone, it's just, there was just all these things that were just for my protection. And for her to suddenly veer off that course, with her diagnosis, that would be a little bit uncharacteristic for her, for sure. But, I was 10, 11, 12 as this was happening. I wasn't 3 or 4 or 5. It's just a different developmental stage. And, whether in hindsight, of course, but I absolutely would have needed and wanted and respected being let in, at least to the degree of knowing that this isn't just a phase or a thing that we're having to go through and there's light at the end of the tunnel. If we know there's no light at the end of the tunnel, I wanted to know that. I absolutely wanted to know that. I don't hold any grudges over anyone who made those decisions on my behalf, but ultimately my behavior toward her and rebelling and fighting and arguing and the stress I was causing her, it caused me so much grief that it was almost equal to the loss itself right after her death. And that could have been spared. I could have curtailed my behavior in a way, or at least relished the moments that I had with her. I could have gone a different path than how her final months really went. And I just wasn't given that opportunity. And I think at that age, there's a way to, every child's different, but there is a way to communicate what needs to be communicated so that the next day after a passing, or the next month, or the next year, or the next several years, that this child isn't growing up with massive deep-seated regret and guilt and remorse over
Right.
something that is out of their control, giving them some control on how they could have behaved during the last months.
Yeah. So your processing started very quickly, in that around age 13, you wrote an essay, kind of an essay, whatever the kind of writing it was. And it was called "My Mom Was Dying and I Didn't Do Anything." And it's now actually in a book. It's from like 1999, Ophelia Speaks, and it's on Amazon. And I actually found it. Can you share a little bit about what that means to you?
The just being published in the book in general,
And even going through the process of writing
of
that.
writing. So writing actually was incredibly cathartic for me. My mom always journaled. I don't know, probably her whole life, but definitely throughout her time of just being my mom, she was always journaling, always a big proponent of writing things down and writing through things. And she would encourage me, but I would kind of like do a little here, do a little there. My life was just, I didn't really, other than, my dad not being in the picture, I just didn't really have a whole lot of stuff I needed to work through myself. And you can see that in like the little bitty starts of like, oh, my friend and I did this. And then like, I didn't write anything else, at very old journals that I have. But I started writing every single day, the day that she died, or perhaps the day after she died. It was right in that realm. And I was writing through all of it. I wrote stupid things, and I wrote sad things, and I wrote things I found joy in, and I wrote about crushes, and I wrote about guilt, and I wrote about everything. Every mix of emotion that a 12-year-old going on 13 would be feeling and going through, still going to school, still having to live life, still having to move forward in a completely different life. When it's only you and one parent, and then you have to go forth, your whole world is different. The whole thing is on its head. And I was a good writer, I was told. And my career has since involved writing, so it's worked out. But it was my 8th grade English teacher who was aware of essays that were being submitted for this book, Ophelia Speaks. And in 1998, she encouraged me to write. However, whatever assignments I was turning in that class, she felt like I should submit. And I didn't really have anything else I wanted to write about other than my mom for that essay. And, I really sat down and took very deep breath of, okay, here's how I'm feeling in this moment, and here's what I'm telling my friends, and here's what I'm saying to others, because it really is a tale of, appreciate what you have while you have it. And that's really the backbone of that. Um, and I was really surprised, but also elated. It was my first publishing when they selected my essay to be in that book. Being published as a 13-year-old was like, oh my gosh, it was, really cool in my opinion. And I never read that essay again. I have yet to read that essay again, to this day, now that I'm 40. So it's been 27 years. Maybe one day I will read the whole thing, but I kept some photocopies of it. I would give them to friends that would enter my life that I wanted to share a piece of myself with. But in some ways, I found it easier to just hand them this essay because they could just kind of understand from a very like, I'm not imposing my emotional will on you. And here I am sitting here crying, telling you all these things. I could just kind of share a piece of me and where I'm coming from, and it would help them connect with me more. At least that was the point when I would do
Yeah.
those things. But yeah, I used to have a signed copy from Sarah Chandler over the years. That's unfortunately been lost, but it was a really important experience for me for sure.
So, well, in the essay, you have a poem, and I didn't talk to you about this before we started recording, but there's a poem in there. Is that your mom wrote? Is that something that you remember? It says, Caren, I'll be your person of good faith. I'll take a
Mm,
stand. I won't break. I'll be your rock and you can lean on. I'll be the fire in your night. I will defend. I will fight. I'll be there when you need me. I swear I'll always be strong, and that will always belong. When honor's at stake, this vow I will make. You mean the world to me. Love, Mom.
yeah. Yeah,
That's a
she wrote
piece.
that. She was the kind of person, I mean, obviously she loved writing, but that actually is a poem that I still have. She gave me this standing clock. It was like a wooden book that would prop up open, and there was a clock on one side and engraved gold-ish plate on the other side, and that poem is engraved in that. She
Oh,
was the kind of person where when she would give me a gift, it would have our initials in the bottom, or it would have some sort of poem etched into it in some way. I mean, it was always a little bit different, but that is one. She gave it to me in the last, it was in the last couple years of her life for sure. And that clock stopped working a very, very long time ago, but I still have it. It's in my bedroom. Um, it just is, it's a testament to her um, thinking of me first in her life. And but as a child, I was always thinking of myself first. So it's a good reminder to me to really think about the others that are in your world, and the ones who are closest, that one, they know that, and two, that within reason. I mean, obviously self-care is important. I mean, like, I don't know if I would propose like giving master suites to children or anything. But
why
you
not?
know, being that person who, is putting others first where it needs to happen, and being aware of that, and it's not all me, 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 even though culture and, and society can feel like that sometimes as well. I mean, it's a balance as women, being grown now, it's a balance of taking care of yourself and taking care of others. But yeah, she wrote that, and I did not remember that I included that poem in that essay. So thank you for reminding me.
Well, I don't, I mean, it's a fairly long essay, but there is one part in there after the poem that I'm wondering if you'll let me read, because it's a really I think it was a really pivotal point for you writing it at age 13. Do you mind if I
Sure.
read it?
Yeah, please, please.
Okay. It says, I am now 13 years old. My mother died on September 27, 1996, when I was 12. I've changed a lot since then. I can distinguish between what's important and what's not. And disrespecting my mom to fit in wasn't important. It wasn't the cool thing to do. I wish I could take it back, but that's the thing about life. I can't. I can only move forward and continue without my mom. She was my support, my backbone, and living without her has made me learn how to become my own support, my own backbone. There is Cricket and Russ, and Cricket was your guardian, yes, and
Yeah,
Russ,
my guardian and her husband at the
okay.
time.
But they're not much older than me. This whole thing has forced me to become more independent. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but now I'm not afraid to tell people what I think. I'm able to accept things more easily, and I'm a lot more generous and giving. So I guess what I'm saying is forget all of the stupid reasons you fight with your parents. It's just not worth it. If you look hard enough, you'll realize everything they're doing is to protect you because they love you. Besides, whether you'll admit it or not, I know you love them too. I thought that was really that you had to grow up quickly,
Yes. Yeah.
and that is very evident in your writing.
Yeah. Yeah, even as being 13, I was just very hyper aware of my situation and my scenario. The love of a parent is very different than the love of anyone else.
Yeah.
It cannot be compared, and you feel a lot lesser and a lot more left behind in a lot of instances in life. Holiday, I mean, you name it, it's a game shift for sure. And I was just very, very aware. And I think I was able to articulate a lot of those instances because I had been writing through this, since the moment that she died. So it wasn't like I just sat down and finally vomited a bunch of words into an essay. I really have been working through my own grief for a while through writing, for sure.
Yeah. So, how throughout your life, how has your mom's breast cancer experience shaped the way you take care of your own body today, like breast health or any gynecological health?
Absolutely. So obviously, having a parent, pass away so young from breast cancer, I've been a high risk, ever since, ever since. And so I had to start OBGYN visits, earlier, my annual exams earlier. Mammograms started for me when I was 30. Several years into that, my doctor wanted me to alternate my annual mammogram with an annual uh, breast MRI. So every 6 months, I'm either getting a mammogram or a breast MRI. And mammograms are in April for me, and breast MRIs are in October for me. Um, but it's always my doctor who I've been with for since 2006 or 2007. She's just very aware of my history, and it's always, better safe than sorry. And she's really gone through my 20s with me, and into my 30s, and now I've turned 40. And even when anything seemed even just slightly amiss, even when my breast tissue was too dense for like a mammogram in my 20s, she would have me go get an ultrasound just to be super sure.
Mhm.
So what we've been doing since, and in general, has just been building a very lengthy to probably fill a binder at some point, screening history, so that as soon as anything starts to develop in any way, we can catch it, basically within 6 months at this point. I mean, literally, it's every 6 months there's a new screening for them to review. And so far I've been in the clear. I never want to jinx that, but so far it is a matter of building that history so that if something does come around, that we catch it.
Yeah, and I would imagine, early detection in your mind is like exactly what, that is like prominent in your mind because when your mom was diagnosed, she did not catch it early. Is that right? Was she stage 4 at that time when she caught it?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And what I was told after the fact, all this was here, all this was after the fact, it was just that when they did diagnose her, that it was either already in her blood or her bones, something along the lines of like, obviously, not possible to treat in any which way. And so in her history of screenings, is that, I don't want to say like, oh, it was the 90s, like like I was some like, like, oh, we're all weird and crazy in the 90s. But, single mom, she's doing her best. She was not consistent on her screenings. She was not consistent. And at best, she had a couple of mammograms under her belt at best. And that's just me like trying to pull my memory of someone referring to that. And she always put me first, which a lot of parents can relate to health wise. You take the kid to the doctor. You don't necessarily go, or, you don't necessarily go to the doctor yourself. You take the kid to the dentist. You're not necessarily going to the dentist yourself. But these things can trickle. So when it comes to screenings, they're so easy, and there's so many resources out there that help make them more affordable. And at the end of the day, if it's a money issue, I will save money catching it early than save money catching it midstream or even at the end. So it's just always been, this is worth it to me. And this is one way that I can honor her and
Mhm.
keep her memory alive, beyond just living,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important. You don't have to have had breast cancer to be so concerned about this. Especially if you have somebody who's died in the past. I know that you and I talked about Corinne, who started Know Your Lemons. And I told you that I was a lemonista with Know Your Lemons, which is just somebody who brings awareness to as many people as possible about breast cancer. Corinne, who is the founder, has never had breast cancer, but her two biological grandmothers passed away of breast cancer, and one of her very, very best friends. And so she, really made it, her mission to make sure that she did whatever she possibly could to bring awareness and talk about early detection and the importance of mammograms and any kind of advocacy of advocating for yourself. So what do you do in your adulthood to help people with that?
I mean, in general, I have a large social network, that's just built up over the years. And every time I get screened, I am the weirdo who asks if I can take my phone in just for a moment to take a photo of the breast MRI machine, or I guess it's just a regular MRI machine, but whatever. I'll take the selfie in the dressing room at the mammogram, take a photo of the mammogram machine, like whatever it is, I'm that person. And, they don't care. I mean, you just give them a heads up. I mean, especially because you're not supposed to have phones in the MRI. But, I always want to promote um just just the awareness, because I think we know, right? We know we should do something, but it's that next step of like, I should be doing this. I just haven't scheduled it. I've been busy. I don't have the money. I'm not insured right now. Like whatever pops up, we have that like next step that we just can't take. And it's very similar in the fitness, industry. What I see all the time with Kaia Fit Sierra is women, I know I should move my body. I know I should do this. I just, showing up, putting the shoes on, it's that next step that's like the killer that prevents it from happening. And so I always try to spread awareness in the sense of, look, if I'm one of the busiest women in Reno, please know that I make time for this. I don't even have health insurance, and I'm paying for this because of these reasons. And it was so easy. It was less than an hour total from walking in the door to walking out the door. You can do this too. If you're not scheduling it now, do it. I've also hosted various different events that have raised funds for local breast cancer nonprofits over the years. And anything I can do, but I really do try to use my story as leverage to, if it just gets one person who sees my content to book that screening, then that's a win. That's a win
I
for sure.
love that. That's so good though. And using that on social media, obviously that's what I do with this podcast and putting it all over on all the platforms, just to get the word out. And I know that people do, they've actually reached out to me, even if they're from different countries, saying, "Hey, I ran across your podcast and thank you so much for interviewing surgeons, because it's because of your podcast interviews we now have a an idea of what we want to do for my daughter's surgery or whatever it is." So I think putting it out there and being loud and proud about it is very, very important. You
Right.
mentioned, I want to wrap this up a little bit by talking about health, your insurance, not having insurance. How do you navigate that? Because I actually do have people who've reached out to me and said, "Look, I'm too busy to get my mammogram," or "I want to go get my mammogram, but I don't have insurance." And so they just put it off. So, how do you navigate that? What are some resources that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest resource, I mean, there's a lot of things across the country. I can only really speak locally within Nevada.
Mhm.
My biggest resource that's enabled me, as soon as I became a business owner and wasn't working, the regular corporate 9 to 5, I just did not really have access to health insurance. And that was about 5 years ago, 5 years ago. And I remember looking at different possibilities for insurance, and it was just all so expensive and it just didn't seem to cover anything. And a friend of mine told me about, here in Nevada, Access to Healthcare Nevada. And it is not insurance. It is, basically for anyone in the state of Nevada, you can apply for it. It's a medical discount program, and basically it discounts everything, almost anything you can think of, as long as you're working with the network that's providing you. But when you compare the cost, I mean, I don't use it for my OBGYN because I have such a long history with her. I don't want to bounce around simply to save a few bucks. I'd rather pay the 190
Mhm.
show up fee for my annual exam, because even if I'm paying that, that's still so much less than even 1 month of
Right.
insurance coverage. So whatever on that front. But they have in the past gotten me some free mammograms. The past few years, they've typically come in at like $80. I know that I put my breast MRI um, through their system, and I can't recall if they actually discounted or not. I think there's some discount there, but I basically pay about $350 for that. And you add that up, 80 plus 350 plus 190 is still, for the whole year, is still really fantastic. And then I still have urgent care coverage or discounts. Feels like coverage. So I'm
Yeah.
always like mixing it up, but it's a really amazing program. And yes, you have to apply, and yes, there's a phone interview in the beginning and all these things. But and I know their prices are about to go up, but as of our recording here on this podcast, it's about $40 a month.
Mhm.
And you can pay and save even more by prepaying a year. So it's just been a fantastic resource, and they're also helpful. And I think a lot of people just don't even know they exist. I think it's
Yeah.
insurance or not insurance, and I just can't afford it, and I just can't do it, and I put it off. But there are resources out there, and there's national resources too. I mean, it's just a matter of, this matters to me, so I'm going to dig in a little bit, lean in a little bit to make sure that I can do this and make it work for me.
Yeah,
And
and
it
it's so worth it. It's so worth it because if you are diagnosed, you want to catch it early. And there is like a cost thing that I just saw where stage one, the cost of like an average cost of being stage 0 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And so the earlier you catch it, the better. And I love that there are resources out there, and I will include those in the show notes. And I also want to reiterate, you're in the fitness industry. You own Kaia Fitness and 4 locations. And there are people who go there who've had breast cancer, who've known people who has breast cancer, who know the importance of keeping your body healthy, your bone health, um, as healthy as possible. So, um, you know, I know that I was very healthy when I got breast cancer, and people were very surprised, and come to find out, healthy people can get breast cancer. But the important part is that the healthier you are, the better, and you are able to move through cancer treatments and all of that. It's not easy, but it's certainly a whole heck of a lot easier than if you are unhealthy. So I think it's great that you are so involved in fitness and that you've done, fundraisers for, breast cancer or whatever nonprofits out there. And I am actually trying to build my nonprofit as much as I can to get enough funds that when people apply for funds from me, that they might be able to take some of that and go get a mammogram or help them with their surgery or, get a wig or something like that, whatever they need for their journey. So I always, appreciate donations from my audience and the public and things like that. So I just thank you for what you do. And I really appreciate your sharing this deep, really emotional story. I know that you said that you have not read that essay in 27 years, and I'm going to read, through the rest of it, just to, kind of absorb who you are and who you were. And I just appreciate your opening up and being vulnerable with me and our audience.
Oh, I really appreciate it. I think one of the things that, I will probably come to is eventually reading that essay for sure. Everything comes in time when you feel ready for it.
Mhm.
It's a little different when it's me who wrote it and it's me who's reading it. Kind of similar to like when there's an on-demand workout, I don't take my own. It's a little funky. I don't want to be
Yeah.
cheered on by myself. It's a little weird. But breast cancer, it's something that any cancer, any health ailment, it really can turn someone's world upside down. And it's not just the patient, it's the whole family. It's, the spouse, it's the children. And there is no guidebook, blueprint on exactly how to navigate those relationships and how these things should go. What we knew about things back in the 90s is so like a fraction of everything that we know, and the types of treatments and things that exist now, the conversations surrounding things now. It was so much more hush hush back then as well.
Mhm.
And I think at the end of the day, really choosing where it feels good and right to be transparent with those you care about the most if you're undergoing a diagnosis, because at the very least, you should not feel alone. I think that's really key. For really the most part of my mom's battle with breast cancer, she isolated herself to feel alone by not sharing that with me and not sharing it with many people. And that can still happen to this day. So if there's a word of encouragement, from a child who has lost someone to breast cancer and was kept in the dark, anything that can be shared and, given that sense of empowerment to that child to really help that person not feel alone, that is something that they can absolutely take with them for the rest of their life, no matter how that diagnosis turns out. If it is terminal, obviously there's a lot of emotions going on there and what you should say or not. But no matter what happens, we're all going to pass one way or another at some point.
Mhm.
And at the very least, we should always empower the ones we care about the most to have only the best memories, the most empowering memories of, I was able to do this with my
Yeah.
person. I was able to say these things. I was able to appreciate the time. I was able maybe to video more, take more photos, or simple things. And it all adds
Absolutely.
up. And I think the main thing is don't suffer alone. Even if maybe you don't have children, maybe you're not married, whatever it looks like don't suffer alone. Find your tribe, because they're out there and everyone is rooting for you to not just be healthy, but truly to be a part of this community, any community that you find, home and beyond.
That's fantastic. Well, I actually in the show notes, I do have Kai Fitness, your all of your social media, how to reach you, and all of that. So if you're in the Reno Sparks area and you're looking for a fitness program, um, I would highly recommend you reach out and check out what, that's out there for Kaia Fitness. And I've heard so many good things anyway. So,
Oh, good.
and I've known it's been around for a long time and stuff like that. Now, okay. But even more importantly, can I see your dog?
Yes. All right. He's been waiting for this moment.
Griselda. I'll bring Griselda over here too.
Come on.
Hi, Griselda.
Here we are. Hello. Oh, you have a ball in your mouth.
Oh, hello. Griselda.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hi. What's his name?
His name is Jigsaw or Jiggy, whatever.
Hi,
Whatever
Jiggy.
you like. He has a half-eaten purple ball in his mouth to replicate my hair, I guess.
I love it. Well, I was going to get my dog Griselda. Griselda, come.
Drop it.
She might actually be outside. I was thinking maybe they could meet each other, but she's
have a little date. Have a little
have a little play date. But she's clearly, I think she's out back. But I remember us talking, saying that you have a dog and that you were afraid that he'd be making sounds.
He's
and
so
stuff.
tall, he can just shove. I had a chair blocking this whole time because he hears excitement or hears emotion, and he just comes right over. And
we love our dogs. They're part of our family. And I've had my granddaughter on screen before and our dog. So this is such a down to earth, conversation that like we're sitting in each other's living room. So
yes,
I think it's great.
I have my mom's photo over my hair.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
One of the trying not to have too much.
Oh, wow. She's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was me and her. She definitely went bright red for the last few years of her life. So I did have red hair myself for a very long time, but about 8 years ago, I went purple. So, but her favorite colors were purple and green. So it all works out.
Oh yeah, so it's a good memory. I love it, and obviously you got your hair from her. She had gorgeous hair.
It worked out. She used to take me to the hairstylist so they could match her blonde to my natural blonde.
Love it.
But I'm 99% sure that is not my hair color anymore. I'm sure it's very blonde at this point, not as sexy.
Well, it's amazing how mine came back. I lost all my hair, and I always had long blonde hair for forever. And then it grew back really dark and curly. And then I did put some highlights in it, but I don't think that these are necessarily them right here. I think this is actually my normal colored hair right now. And I'm just keeping it like that. So anyway, well, thank you very much, Caren. This has been such a nice conversation, and I just really appreciate it again for you being vulnerable and telling your story and introducing us to your dog and maybe your husband in the background.
Yeah, fiance's around with my charging cord just in case my computer dies.
Yep. Sometimes my husband gets in the background. I'm like, hey, hun. Well, just so you know, that's my mother's blouse. My mother passed away 5 years ago, and I keep her blouse in the background. It's a piece that she bought when I was a cabbie consultant. And so I keep it on there. And then my pink boxing gloves. I've got my pink boxing gloves on there.
Love it.
So yeah. So memories of mom.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, to my audience, I really appreciate your joining us again on this episode of Test Those Breasts. And again, if you head over to your favorite platform and rate and review this podcast, it always does help get the word out. And I hope that you all enjoy this episode with Caren Roblin and visit her social media and go to Kaia Fitness and all the things. So thank you. Thank you very much. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Bye for now.